Marine colonel's joke. Iron Hawk was just a nickname until Sarah Brown made a battalion freeze mid-breath. Watch how one call sign turned from punchline to battlefield command. And why nobody laughed after dawn. The colonel smiled like a man setting a trap. He tapped the roster once, then twice. "Brown," he said, "you fly like a dream and argue like a lawyer. That makes you Iron Hawk." Try not to scratch the paint. Laughter rolled across the hangar. Boots scuffed. Someone coughed to hide a grin. Sarah Brown stood still. Her helmet sat under one arm. Her jaw did not move. The nickname hung in the air like warm smoke that wouldn't leave. She had known worse. She had carried heavier. But this was her new battalion, and first impressions hardened like clay in the sun. She breathed once slowly. "Copy," she said. "Iron Hawk it is." The colonel's eyes searched her face for a flinch. He found boredom instead. That annoyed him more than fear would have. Outside, wind dragged sand over the runway. The squadron's birds slept in their rows. Dark noses pointed at a bright horizon. Ground crew moved like chess pieces between fuel lines and tool carts. Some glanced at Sarah when they thought she wouldn't notice. She noticed everything. A captain from logistics sidled up. "Don't sweat it," he said. "Sticks around a week. Then they move on." "They won't," Sarah said. "You sure?" "Yes." He waited for an explanation. He didn't get one. In the briefing room, maps covered the wall like skin. A corridor of canyons, a ridge that bent like a broken key. Call signs flickered on the screen with their mission roles. The colonel walked them through comms, altitude blocks, contingencies. Every sentence had a timer attached. Every pause meant risk. Sarah sat at the edge of the table. She drew a thin pencil line from a dry riverbed to a spur that offered wind shadow. It was a route no one used. Too narrow. Too easy to miss. But if the weather shifted, it could be the only way to sneak a rotorcraft through the throat of stone. During questions, a gunner asked about cross-loading. Another asked about rotor wash over dust. Sarah asked about the wind shear on the second ridge. Silence. Then a shrug from the colonel. "We'll feel it when we feel it," they filed out. Her crew chief, Diaz, caught her at the door. "You want the truth or the polite version?" he said. "Truth." They laughed because they're nervous, he said. "New pilot, new rhythm, new rules. If your hands are steady, the name dies. If they're not, it multiplies," Sarah said. "Yeah." Afternoon heat rose like a wall. Sarah walked the flight line. Her helo wore dust like an old coat. She ran fingers along the intake, checked the rotor head, listened to the soft tick of cooling metal. She spoke to the aircraft under her breath. Not a prayer. An agreement. At dusk, alarms barked once. A drone feed painted the canyons in cold blue. Convoy stranded. 2 vehicles had lost power at the choke point. Radio traffic crackled with clipped words and unspent fear. Medics were trying to push through from the west and failing. The colonel pointed with a pen. "Night ingress. No moon, hot mics only. Iron Hawk, you're on point because you asked about the wind." A few snorts. A muttered "perfect." Sarah watched the wind chart. She looked like a statue trying to remember it had a heartbeat. "Copy," she said. "Recommend riverbed 1 to spur 2, low as sin. 5 seconds hover. Fast ropes, then out." The colonel blinked. "That slot's a rumor." "It's there," Sarah said. "It will be there tonight." He let the map fold. "Fine, you miss it, you eat rock. Launch in 10. Diaz tightened her harness. "In 10 we make believers," he said. "In 10 we stay boring," Sarah said. They lifted into the kind of dark that eats sound. The ridge met them with a fist of wind the forecast hadn't promised. Altitude tape slid. Canyon walls leaned in. Her crew chief swore once softly, like a father at a bedside. And then up ahead, the riverbed narrowed to a slit no wider than a breath. If Iron Hawk already has you hooked, tap subscribe for part 2. Keywords: Marine Colonel Story, call sign Iron Hawk, Special Operations Rescue, Battalion Suspense, Helicopter Pilot Thriller. She slid left pedal a whisper, nudged collective, tipped the nose down until the canyon became a hallway that didn't want guests. Rotor tips skimmed air that felt dense as rope. Dust rose to meet them like a second ceiling. Diaz called 10 feet. Then 8. Then didn't call at all. Sarah kept her hands steady as vows. She read the wind through the stick like braille. The slit widened. Only by inches, enough they knifed through. A gust tried to shove them into the wall. She leaned into it, calm as a metronome, and the gust got bored. "Visual on convoy," the right seat said. "IR strobes on 3. 1's cold. Put us between, Sarah said. We're a door. They walked through. They flared over broken asphalt. Dust wrapped them like wet cloth. Diaz kicked ropes. Lines slapped night. Shadows slid into motion. Medics, security, the kind of courage no one claps for. Bird 2 holding high, came a voice. You're threading needles down there, Ironhawk. Stay high, Sarah said. Your job is the sky. Mine is the ground that won't let go. A round snapped somewhere behind the ridge. Then another. Not aimed, just angry. Sarah kept the ship rock still over the convoy, 5 feet up, no more. She felt the engine as pulse, the blades as clock hands. Time became a circle she refused to leave. First package up, Diaz said. A stretcher rose through powder air. A young face. Blood that wanted to be brave but couldn't. Sarah didn't look hard enough to remember him. Leaders learn when not to memorize ghosts. Second package. Third. Then the road groaned and gave. One of the dead trucks slid into a shallow ditch. Its rear axle stuck and blocked their exit path. Options? The right seat asked. Over the ditch, then climb hard, Sarah said. Wind will slap us. It always does. They lifted a body with. The ditch tried to inhale them. Sarah put the nose into the tiny wind she had predicted in the briefing hours ago. It rewarded her for her faith. The helo climbed like a patient animal. They cleared the ditch, drifted left, and Sarah brought them back to the slit. The canyon felt tighter now. Wind different. Like the night had changed its mind. Lead be advised, upstream gusts increasing, the Overwatch said. Copy, Sarah answered. Same plan. Less time. At the slit they met a new problem. Sand was pouring from the high wall. A veil. Beautiful if you didn't care about staying alive. It cut her IR like fog. Brown? Diaz said. Trust my hands, she said. He did. She turned the aircraft not by sight but by pressure. Left hand feathered. Right hand firm. Her feet led like dancers guiding a blind partner. They slipped through a place the map had never loved and came out into open air that felt like forgiveness. The radio went quiet. That kind of quiet means respect or fear. Tonight it meant both. Back on the pad, the colonel waited. His smile was smaller. His jaw was tight. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The battalion moved in a soft circle around the bird, not too close, as if heat still poured from it. Sarah killed the engines. The blades ticked down. Diaz climbed out and stood in the wash that wasn't there anymore. Someone started to clap. The colonel cut it off with a look. He pointed at Sarah. Debrief, now. Her boots hit the ground. She walked past him without slowing. He turned, following. Inside the room, lights hummed. A single drone still fed canyon footage to the screen. He stopped at the table. So, he said, Ironhawk finds veins in stone. She finds wind, Sarah said. Same thing? Tonight it was. He leaned in. What happens when the wind lies? Want the secret map they hid from Ironhawk? Hit like and subscribe now. Don't miss part 3. Keywords. Marine helicopter rescue. Canyon insertion. IR flight. Covert route. Battalion debrief. Emergency lighting bled the room red. Generators cuffed awake. On the screen, the canyon map split like a wound. Under Sarah's ghost-thin line, a second path glowed dull white. Shorter, riskier, and marked with a symbol she hadn't seen since another theater, another year. Whose overlay? She asked. Silence. The colonel's jaw worked. He looked at the comms officer. The comms officer looked at the floor. Diaz frowned. That symbol's Black Book, he said. Not our lane. Not since last winter, Sarah said. You were on that? The colonel asked, surprise sneaking through. Yes, ground rumbled. A far building door slammed in the wind. The base had nerves tonight. Sarah traced the white route with one finger. It dove through a narrower cut. It shaved minutes but demanded perfection from hands, machine, and weather. If you tried it on a bad night, you made new names for the rocks. Who uploaded this? She asked again. Comms finally spoke. Package from division. Routine update. No flag. Routine, Diaz said. Updates that hide in the dark aren't routine, Sarah said. The colonel watched her. Would you have taken it? Not tonight, she said. Tomorrow? If the wind tells me yes, he let that sit. You read wind like scripture, he said. I read wind like debt, Sarah said. You pay or it collects. The colonel's gaze softened a fraction. Then hardened again. He pointed at the symbol. Whatever this is, it didn't happen by accident. Someone wants you faster, or someone wants you broken. Word spread the way rumor always does, quick, careless, hungry. By dusk, troops in the chow tent whispered about 2 maps and 1 pilot who flew through a door only she could see. Some called it luck. Some called it ego. Most started calling Ironhawk without the smirk. Sarah skipped the tent. She walked the perimeter until fence and sky looked like one line. When she turned to head back, a corporal stepped out from the motor pool shadows. Nervous. Young. "Ma'am," he said. "I saw a thing." He told a short story in short words. A civilian tech with a badge that scanned green plugging a drive into comms. Late. No witness. Quick hands. Quicker exit. Sarah thanked him. She put the details in the quiet place behind her ribs where fear goes to become fuel. Then she went to the colonel with a simple sentence. "We have a leak. Night training scrubbed. Perimeter tightened." The colonel called in favors and ghosts. By midnight, a name emerged from the fog of probably, an outside contractor with a habit of being in rooms right before rooms became compromised. Sarah asked to speak to him. Protocol said no. The colonel said no. Sarah walked away. Diaz caught up. "You really going to let that stand?" "For now," she said. "But I will fly where the answers are." At 0300, a medevac call punched through the net. Ambush North Ridge. Too critical. No time for a convoy. Weather deteriorating in 20. The colonel looked at her, question in his eyes he didn't voice. Sarah snapped her chin strap. "Same canyon," she said. "Different wind. Launch." They climbed into a sky that wasn't ready to be morning. Cloud wore the moon like a bandage. The radio carried a sound she didn't like. Breath trying not to be panic. At the canyon mouth, the slit had changed. Sand moved, drag eddied. The map's white route, too short, too clean, waited like a grin. "Which door?" Diaz asked.
"The one that doesn't want us," Sarah said. "Why?"
"Because it tells the truth." She angled toward the harder path. The wind hit them with teeth. "If you felt that decoy flare in your gut, hit the bell. Part 4 drops next." The flare burned like a liar's promise. Sarah didn't blink. She put the nose away from it, into the chop. The ship shuddered. Diaz braced without comment. Right seat cursed under his breath in a language the cockpit had learned to respect. They bled altitude to gain control. Rotor disc bit clean air, then dirty, then clean again. "Talk to me," Diaz said. "Left side shear. Right side lift," Sarah said. "Make it one thing. Working on it, gunfire somewhere ahead. Not aimed at the sky. A fight on the ground that didn't care about angels. Patient 1 is losing pressure." A voice cracked over the net. Sarah answered with position and time estimates that were conservative enough to be believed and aggressive enough to matter. They broke through the worst of it, and the canyon opened into a bowl. 2 vehicles smoked like cheap incense. Figures moved low. 1 waved an IR strobe. No flares. Honest signatures. "Set us windtail, fast in, fast out," Diaz said. "Wind nose," Sarah countered. "Why?" "Because the ground here lies about where it ends." He didn't argue. He knew her sense for edges. They went in nose to wind, rear ramp facing the wounded. Security formed a shell. The medic teams moved with that frantic precision that looks like chaos to outsiders and like love to those inside it. "Package," Diaz called. "Lift." Second package, lift. Third package, a figure who kept apologizing for bleeding on their deck even as he bled more. "Apology accepted," Diaz said, voice flat and kind. A tracer stitched the bowl's rim. Someone up there wanted to convince the night it was day. Sarah held them steady anyway. "Tight 30, she said. "Then we leave." On 29, the hillside sighed and collapsed. Not a slide. A slump, slow, heavy, eager to become permanent. Dust surged. "The world turned into milk, can't see," right seat said. "You don't need to," Sarah said. "What?" "Close your eyes and count to 3. He did. When he opened them, they were climbing smooth, patient, committed. "Brown," the colonel's voice cut in, uneven with the kind of anger that comes from fear. "You ignored a flare." "It was wrong," she said. "How did you know?" It enjoyed being seen. Silence long enough to grow moss. Then, copy. They broke the canyon and found clean sky like a gift. Back on base, med teams pulled the wounded through doors that smelled like bleach and second chances. Sarah peeled her gloves. Sweat chilled her fingers. Diaz stared at the horizon like it had told a bad joke. The colonel met them at the pad. No speech, he walked Sarah to a side office away from ears. "Contractor's gone," he said. "Gone where?" Off base. Who cleared him? You don't want that answer, he said. I do, Sarah said. He looked at the floor. Me. Honesty weighed the room down. He explained fast. Pressure from above. A test package. A white route to evaluate future doctrine. No signatures. No fingerprints. Just outcomes. You fed my people a maze and watched, Sarah said. He didn't deny it. I needed proof, he said. Of what? That the wind listens to you. She almost laughed. What if it hadn't? I was ready to stop you, he said. He wasn't. They both knew it. Before either could say more, sirens split the air. Not practice. The kind of pitch that pulls your marrow. Operations officer at the door, eyes too wide. Perimeter breach. 2 drones over fuel farm. We're blind on 1 camera bank. This is sabotage with a signature. Stay with Ironhawk. Subscribe before Part 5 goes live. The first drone skimmed low like a skipped stone. The second climbed, then nosed down with a smug little wiggle. Security lit both with tracers, but angles and tanks made bad math. Sarah was already moving. Diaz flare kit. Right seat jammer on sweep. We're not air, Diaz said. We're hands, Sarah said. They sprinted across tarmac that felt longer than it looked. Smell of fuel. Taste of metal. The sound of a siren that refused to breathe. Jammer spiking, right seat called. Dumps their GPS but not their hate, Diaz said. Good enough, Sarah said. Drone 1 wobbled. Clipped a fence. Tumbled. Small comfort. Drone 2 corrected. Smart. Human smart. It rolled over the fuel farm and dropped a canister that popped smoke. The smoke formed letters that made everyone slow for a heartbeat. Iron. Then Hawk. Like a taunt on a family door. Someone wants your name to carry the fire, Diaz said. Then we teach it water, Sarah said. They reached a crash cart with foam cannons. Crew chiefs already manned the lines. Sarah didn't take command. She took a hose. So did the colonel. For a minute, they weren't ranks. They were people who didn't want to watch their home burn. Security netted drone 2 with a quick deploy mesh. It fought like a hooked fish. The jammer sang. The drone died mid-sentence. Smoke cut off on the K of Hawk. Fire crews drowned the tantrum. Steam rose. Night tasted clean again. Ops pulled a shard from drone 2's shell. Stamped inside, a contractor logo scrubbed just badly enough to be read by anyone who cared. The colonel stared at it like it owed him money. Get me the company, he said. They won't pick up at 4 a.m., Ops said. They will for me, he said. They did. The call turned ugly fast. Field test became miscommunication. Simulated breach became vendor error. The colonel's voice never rose. That made it worse. He hung up with a promise that sounded like a verdict. He faced Sarah. Tomorrow you stand down, he said. No flight ops until I finish carving this mess out of our spine. She nodded, then shook her head. Respectfully, sir, no. He blinked. Explain. They want me grounded, she said. That means the next map arrives when I'm in a chair. We fly while the wind still talks to us, Diaz winced. Ma'am, odds say this heat goes worse before it goes cold. Odds like attention, Sarah said. I prefer patterns. She spent dawn with maintenance, swapping out a sensor suite she didn't trust. She recalibrated a wind model on a laptop older than most privates. She ate a protein bar like it had wronged her. By mid-morning, a call. Remote village East Ridge. Generator fire. Civilians panicking. Local partners pinned by crowd, not bullets. Sometimes chaos is just people who want the same door. The colonel stopped her with a hand on the ladder. You sure? No, she said. Good answer, go. They lifted into air as thin as rumor. Sarah flew quiet. Diaz watched the edges. Right seat watched the center. Between them, they kept the world from sliding. The village sat in a bowl, smoke rising polite at first, then greedy. People ran in loops that looked random until you saw the pattern. Everyone searching for one person. LZ tight, Diaz said. Too many hands, right seat said. Hands lift too, Sarah said. They sat down in dust and noise. Megaphone, gestures, basic words. Doors opened. A narrow corridor through a human storm. They pulled 3 burn victims and 1 old man who refused to leave his dog, until Sarah pointed at the dog and then at the ramp, then at the sky. He accepted the sequence like math. On climb out, a boy on the ridge flashed a mirror. Then again, not a signal for rescue, a code. The flashes matched the drone jammer's pattern from last night. Sarah stared. Who taught you that? She whispered to no one. Back on base, Intel zoomed the mirror in. Sticker on the back. Contractor logo. Not scrubbed. Proud. They traced the sticker to a supply convoy 3 weeks old. Human terrain, Diaz said. Someone seeded the field before harvest, Sarah said. The colonel called her to his office. He looked older. Not weaker, just honest. I asked Division for a list of every asset tied to that contractor, he said. They sent me a file with your name in it. Framed or forced to sign. Don't miss the reveal. Subscribe and watch for next.